I think people love numbers and benchmark scores because they're good headlines. They're easy to compare with one another. You can say this phone's better than this because it's got a high number. And that's not a really useful comparison anymore.
In the short term, Apple have lost the AI game. I think in the next few years, they're just going to come in, have spent significantly less money than everyone else. And I think for a lot of users, there's not going to be any difference in usability.
It's big news and exciting news. And I actually was really impressed that Google were the ones to sort of get there first, because if anything, I thought that would be something that we would see from Apple well before we'd see other manufacturers jump on that.
No one's going to get fooled. Like, you're not going to call up your German grandmother or something, talk to her in perfect German all the time. She's going to put the phone down like, wow, he really was a good Duolingo.
Welcome, everyone, to the 22nd episode of the TechRadar Podcast. My name is Josephine Watson, and I'm joined today, as always, by Hamish, Hector.
Hello.
As well as Axel Metz.
Hello.
Friend of the show, Richard Priday.
Hello there.
And Jacob Krol, dialing in from the New York office.
Hello.
This week, we'll be talking through the events of the star-studded Made by Google showcase, including the freshly unveiled Pixel 10 lineup. We'll be sharing our first impressions of the new Pixel 10, 10 Pro, 10 Pro XL, and 10 Pro Fold phones, keep count, as well as the Pixel Watch 4 and Buds 2a. All this, plus some interesting moments from host Jimmy Fallon, made the show one to remember. But before we walk through the news and the highs and lows, here's Hamish with this episode's rendition of In Case You Missed It.
Thanks, Josie. So skipping past Made by Google, plenty has happened since our last podcast. More details about that 360 anti-gravity drone were released, and we even had the chance to fly it, with our camera's editor Tim Coleman calling it the most exciting drone for years. The Apple Watch got its blood oxygen readings back in the US, with a caveat that the watch itself can't display the results. The feature was banned in January 2024 due to a patent dispute, but a new US customs ruling allows Apple to reinvent and re-release the feature, so now your watch will take the reading while the result will be calculated and displayed on your iPhone. AOL finally ended dial-up. Despite a sharp decline starting in the late 90s, some were still clinging to the service, especially in places where internet alternatives were unavailable. In 2022, 175,000 US homes still use dial-up. Now, those remaining few will need to find an alternate way to access the internet. Gamescom took place over the last week and included plenty of big gaming updates and announcements. We got new details for Black Ops 7, a first look at Fallout Season 2, a teaser for Black Myth Zhonghui, plenty of indie game trailers, and of course a release date for Hollow Knight Silksong. Lastly, we of course saw the rollout of GPT-5, which has been mixed to say the least. Some ChatGPT subscribers were disappointed at launch, and it seems their dissatisfaction with the update has only grown as the much-hyped chatbot has been described as soulless and an extreme energy sink. At the same time, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has sparked fears by calling the AI market a bubble. As AI costs continue to balloon and dissatisfaction rises, I'm left wondering if Apple might have been right about AI all along.
Thanks, Hamish. So, as you alluded to there, some grumblings happening in the AI space, and that particularly meaty topic is obviously about GPT-5 rolling out. Not everyone's super happy about it, but the overarching theme really about what the changes have been has been safeguarding. ChatGPT acknowledging its own knowledge gaps and also removing some of that slightly sycophantic, overly affirming language that it had before. There were some big feelings from users, though, especially those who may have formed a more emotional connection with their LLM friends.
Yeah.
Now, looking at what Hamish said there about Apple's approach maybe being better, how do we think this might affect broader AI rollouts? And Jake, I'd be interested to hear from you a little bit on this one.
Yeah, it's been bumpy for ChatGPT and OpenAI here, especially. They teased it as this huge revolutionary upgrade. I think Sam Altman tweeted something to the effect of the Death Star about to blow up a planet before, right? And it turned out it was pretty incremental, the stuff they had to roll back on. They are listening to users, which is nice. I think some other companies could, stand to learn from that a little bit. But maybe they'll take a more Apple-like approach in the future in that, they're maybe going to not tease it, hype it up as much, and maybe take a little bit longer to deliver on some of the features. But for now, at least, parts of 4.0 are back. My main gripe was that as a paying Plus user, we didn't get access to 5.0 the same day. So maybe they'll correct that when 6.0 comes. Not that that's going to come soon, though. We'll see.
Yeah, I think certainly not going to come soon now. I think they're probably going to be sitting on things for a little while there. No, it's an interesting one. The whole subscriber tier side of things got very, very confusing to follow because, like you say, you didn't get it on release. And then also it's only subscribers that got 4.0 access given back to them as well, right?
It's been really strange. They're kind of slicing and dicing it. I know I looked again last night and I have thinking, so a little more advanced, but it even prompts you if you want pro level thinking to pay more money each month. So it's been confusing. And I think we're still waiting to see how the dice like fully fall from it. But hopefully most users get back the model that they wanted to use.
Yeah, one would hope. I mean, I know I've sort of made reference there jokingly to people who've got those emotional attachments. For some people, it is actually a very important way that they get out their feelings. Some people use it as like a diary almost. And there are other people populating certain areas of Reddit that use it more like a replacement for a partner. And I think some of those were the most vocal people about their heartbreak, basically. I think one of the quotes I saw from that said Reddit forum was about something like, ChatGPT-5 is wearing the dead skin of my friend. It's a hugely emotive issue for people.
It still baffles me just how many people use it. I think I really still underestimate just how popular it is. I mean, because I, obviously for work and in this profession in particular, it's quite difficult to find a use for it ethically. So I know a lot of people use it for work, like in office jobs for admin and things. And then at home, like personally, I still haven't found it as a sort of alternative for Google search, and I don't have the app or anything. So every time we talk about this new ChatGPT news, it surprises me every time just how much paid views and traffic and interest there is in this topic. But yeah, I'm still not a ChatGPT user, but I know so many people who use it every day.
Yeah, I use it a bit, but I haven't, not enough to pay for it. And obviously, yeah, because I think a big thing is when we're writers, we can't really use it ethically.
Yeah. And that's where this new knowledge gap sort of feature that they've rolled out as part of it, the ability for ChatGPT to say, actually, I don't know, or I can't find any information on that. That's really important. Would have been nice to have 5 models ago, though. But we live and learn.
And I think just also this whole like ChatGPT rollout, I think it's trying to sort of fix a few things that they probably should have been thinking about early on, because like...
And they were told about by people like us.
Yeah, like obviously the safeguarding thing is really important. Obviously there's like lawsuits about people now suing OpenAI for various sort of things where ChatGPT has recommended health advice and other things and it's gone wrong.
AI psychosis.
And all of this sort of stuff. And I think also it's things like, I guess the issue some people are having is these AI bots like use so much energy. So now like one of the updates with 5 was the idea is it will sort of, if depending how many models you've got access to, it will try and send your prompt to the AI sort of tier that it thinks is most capable of solving your answer without going too far above it. So if you only need like a quick, simple math equation, it will give you like a lower level thing. Whereas if you want like a really deep, in-depth research topic, it will give you a slightly more powerful AI. And obviously that's to try and control the fact that sort of AI costs and data is just like spiraling. And they're just not making any money, because people paying even like the most expensive, I think it's like $200+ a month. That's not covering the costs of AI. No. And so I think that's obviously though going to be frustrating for users though that are used to just having the best and brightest thing answering their question, and then suddenly it is just they've got a simpler query, and so they are being downgraded to a simpler AI. And so I guess if you are paying a considerable sum of money a month, that's going to be frustrating. And I just also think with like all of that stuff, then seeing Apple, who I think in some regards sort of did overpromise and underdeliver on some of this Siri stuff. Even I was seeing something about how like data centers, that you have to upgrade the brains behind AI so frequently that you think like, it used to be like, okay, we'll buy all these really expensive chips from NVIDIA. They'll last us like 5 to 10 years. And no,
now
you have
5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have to be getting like the newer chips like every 2 years, and suddenly then the costs of like trying to manage all this stuff is just insane.
Never mind the fact that we are rapidly running out of the materials we need to build half of the things that go into anything.
Like, you know what? In the short term, Apple have lost the AI game. I think that's compared to everyone else. But I think in the next few years, they're just going to come in, have spent significantly less money than everyone else. And I think for a lot of users, there's not going to be any difference in usability, especially if they are just piggybacking off these other services, which, you know, Axel, you sort of used it a bit more, and you when you were sort of saying that Siri with ChatGPT was pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, that's Apple Intelligence in its best form in my experience. You get the same experience as you would do on the ChatGPT app for the
Yep.
most part. So yeah, I think it's true that Apple has always jumped into the game of whatever product category it is later, but got it right. And I don't think we can say it's going to do that for AI because it has kind of tried a little bit on its own and floundered a bit. But I think you're right. They are kind of taking their time, and it's probably going to pay off, despite the sort of flack they've had to endure for doing that over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I think as you say, there's the consumer interest point around like the promises necessarily made for Series 2.0 in the iPhone 16. That's a separate thing, and I think they have addressed that in the Craig Federighi interview, which obviously we did in collaboration with Tom's Guide. And speaking of busyness, let's move on to talk about Gamescom, because that's been one of the biggest events that we've had in the last couple of months. So we have seen a litany of new games, some new hardware, some exciting new bits. Anyone see anything that jumped out to them as an exciting new game?
I mean, the Lego Batman, the full title.
That was my pick.
I know. You.
Legacy of the
Lego.
Dark Knight.
Legacy
There we go,
of the Dark. I mean,
Dark Knight.
the
Legacy.
Batman.
Legacy.
They didn't message me.
The Batman Arkham games are my favourite games of all time.
Yeah.
And I have fond memories of playing Lego Batman with my brother when I was, 10 or 11. And this seems like a combo of both. So it's an open world Lego Batman game.
And I love
that seems insane.
It's going to be so good.
Looking at the trailers, it's not like sort of the Lego Star Wars where they jump between movies. They have pulled elements. So obviously they've got sort of the Heath Ledger style Joker. We're all doing it, but you've got the Heath Ledger style Joker with the why so serious stuff. But then you've also got the sort of the chase scene from the Batman with the Penguin and like sort of the Batmobile coming through the fire. And it's not going to be you're jumping between different stories.
No.
They've just pulled elements from all of these different.
It's an original story
Yeah.
with inspiration from the franchise.
And I think that's such a cool approach to it.
What about you? Did you have any games you're interested in from Gamescom?
It would be Silksong, even though I haven't actually played Hollow Knight.
Big fan.
It's call me what you will. I really love Metroidvanias. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I finally finished the Metroid Prime remaster. But it has emphasized to me that I do need to actually go and play the original. Although in some ways I'm also kind of sad that it's finally coming out, because maybe you've seen all the stuff on social media of the people desperate for Silksong news over the past few years, and there's just like basically professional trolls who will tweet during every single Nintendo Direct, Silksong!
I am almost 100% sure that the reason the comments have been locked down on every Nintendo live stream for the last few months is just because they're sick of seeing Silksong. That and people saying Switch 2 is too expensive. Anyway, Jake, what about you? Did you see any games that jumped out to you from Gamescom or hardware?
Definitely Lego Batman for me. And I'm excited to see if they kind of pull, I know it's two different, I think, game publishers, but if they pull from that Lego Drive game, which was like their race car open world one. So I'm very curious to see if any of those elements make it in here. But open world Lego Batman seems like the best, and hopefully they do it for Star Wars next.
We also got the release date for the ROG Xbox Ally X, which has now been announced to be released on the 16th of October. Big news. You already did a video earlier this year, and you mentioned 2 Xbox handhelds in a year is interesting.
Yeah, because you've also got, you've got the Xbox sort of VR headset as well, which is sort of a lot of, Xbox seems to have done a little bit more on that hardware stuff, but it's also sort of, from me as well, I'm actually now planning to sell my old Xbox. I'm really excited for Silksong, but also Fallout Season 2, we got like a proper trailer for that. Season 1 was really fantastic.
I loved Season 1.
And it's really cool to see some of this stuff. Obviously, you get a Death Claw finally. We sort of, I think, of like a skeletal teaser from Season 1. So actually seeing like a proper monster in Season 2 is pretty good. And also you get Mr. House.
So now we have to move on because we've got a lot of ground to cover when it comes to talking about Made by Google. I'm not going to list through all the products again because that felt like it took me 10 minutes in the intro. But Axel, could you give us the headlines of the devices that have come out and what's sort of new and interesting in them?
Yeah, so this was an interesting launch from a phone's point of view in that all 4 phones at least look pretty much identical to last year. We've got the Pixel 10 Pro, the Pixel 10 there, then there's also the XL, the larger model, and the 10 Pro Fold. 4 new phones, pretty much all look the same as previous models. The headline upgrades, I think, PixelSnap, so that's like a built-in magnetic Qi 2 wireless charging technology system, essentially the first MagSafe system for Android, if you want to call it that.
Well, actually, HMD Skyline last year.
HMD Skyline. Well, we'll talk about it.
We respect the original.
Sorry. But we'll,
Nokia's still out here being the OGs quietly in the background.
But it's a big deal. It's a big deal for a mainstream Android phone, and we'll get into those reasons later, I'm sure. And then another hardware upgrade, the Tensor G5. So I've written the specs, the exact figures here, so I don't get them wrong, but a 34% faster CPU and a 60% more powerful TPU, which is like Google's on-device machine learning brain for things like image generation, language translation, that sort of thing. So the Tensor G5 is really a chipset built for AI specifically. And again, we'll talk about why that's a good thing for the Pixel line and why it's kind of controversial. Other things, a dedicated telephoto lens for the base model here. So previously you just had a wide and an ultra wide. So the base model now has a 10.8 megapixel camera, I think, which is the same as you'll get on the Fold. And then lastly, I'd say, well, there's a lot of new software features, but Camera Coach is probably the biggest one, which is an AI-based camera tool that can kind of analyze a scene in the viewfinder of the Pixel 10 and then suggest recommendations for how you can improve that shot. So whether that's like framing, lighting, where the subject should stand. And Jacob and Richard, I think you've tried it, so we can talk about that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the big four kind of upgrades, at least as I see it, for the non-folds at least, and we'll talk about the others in a minute.
Yeah. So I wanted to pick up on that Tensor thread. So obviously, as you say, the machine learning part of it is a big part of this conversation, but from an audience perspective, people seem to be quite frustrated that they're sticking with the Tensor chip strategy. We had a comment on one of our TikToks, which was, I've been with them since one of the first Pixel phones and bought multiple different models, but the new Tensor G5 is still way behind. It's about 25 to 30% slower than the fastest chips in processing and nearly 40 to 50% weaker in graphics. After all this time, I expected better. Now, we spoke about this a little bit yesterday. Why is it that Google's sort of willing to take the hit here?
I think people love numbers and benchmark scores because they're good headlines. They're easy to compare with one another. You know, you can say this phone's better than this because it's got a higher number. And that's not a really useful comparison anymore. Maybe it used to be when the gulf in power was a bit more dramatic, but it's not so much anymore.
Yeah.
And yes, Google's Tensor chipsets are objectively less powerful than Apple's or Qualcomm's equivalents. But you'll only notice that gap really if you play games on the highest graphical settings or you take 50 pictures in 10 seconds and, you know, you might get a bit of stuttering or a bit of lag. But for 99% of smartphone tasks, which is what we all do every day, the Tensor is perfectly fine. And I think because Google has focused so heavily on software optimization, and we talked about that TPU unit in the chipset, it's probably the chipset that delivers the cleanest Android experience and also the most advanced AI features of any phone.
Yep.
So I would say, you know, if you want a gaming phone and you want a super powerful kind of productivity companion, get a Galaxy Ultra or get a ROG phone for gaming. But if you want a phone that feels like the future, to be honest, and you know, for the things we do every day, calling, streaming, scrolling, they are ahead of the pack, I think.
It's so interesting, you know, you bring up the gaming part. Every other comment that was in any of these threads talking about the Tensor chips was, oh yeah, but it's rubbish for gaming. And you could see the frustration through the screen was palpable from the people responding like, oh, I don't game on my phone, so why do I care?
And that person, that original comment you mentioned, they said they've bought how many of the last few Pixel phones?
I think they just said since one of the first Pixels. They haven't said how many specifically.
Yeah, so they keep buying those Pixel phones for a reason over a Samsung phone or whatever Android phone you like, because they do offer this simple, clean experience that works.
It's just unfortunate that Google's made itself the obvious odd one out in this situation, because basically every other equivalent Android phone is using the Snapdragon 8 Elite or 8 Elite for Galaxy in the case of the Samsungs. I think it's probably a long-term play by Google because they're obviously aiming to have full vertical integration like Apple does with the A-series chips. But I think it's going to take them a lot longer to get there than the fans are necessarily going to like. So everyone's just going to have to sit tight, I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to shake off the sort of lower power tag. But I think if you actually use these phones, 99% of the time you'll be satisfied, I think.
And realistically, we're still only 10 pixels in as well. Like, people shouldn't, especially given that it's using their own hardware, you kind of have to let them cook. Give Google some time, guys. But it's an interesting one. And then on the PixelSnap side of things as well, that's been another thing that's been divisive among people. There's that age-old thing of like, oh, Apple users aren't going to stop talking about this for years now because, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Richard, why is it sort of such a big story for these Pixel phones to have a MagSafe equivalent?
Well, it's interesting because this technology's been around for a couple of years now, but no one has really adopted it. As we were saying earlier, the HMD Skyline was the first to actually use it, but HMD doesn't really sell phones in that big numbers, I'm sorry to say. We did have Samsung put Qi 2 on I think it was the Galaxy S25 Ultra only earlier this year, but they only did it half-heartedly, so it's got the charging speed, but not the magnets unless you buy a case. So Google, there are magnets within all of the Pixels, including the Fold as well. So it's the first foldable with this as well, which is kind of noteworthy. But yeah, just having unlocked, I mean, how many years has it been? Half a decade's worth of iPhone accessories that have been designed for MagSafe, because MagSafe and Qi 2 effectively the same thing. Apple contributed a lot of technology towards that before. Then moving on to MagSafe 2, it's always got to be one step ahead. I don't think having compatibility with all these MagSafe products is going to convince anyone to switch.
No.
But I think the fact that people who may have had iPhones for several years at this point have built up a little collection of MagSafe chargers, maybe the wallets, what have you, they will be able to take that and put it onto the Pixel, and that's just, makes the transition a little easier.
Yeah, I think it was a smart move by Google to name drop Apple in the keynote in the way that they did. Because, like a lot of companies wouldn't do that, but they acknowledged that a lot of people already have these MagSafe accessories. So if they buy a Pixel phone, you won't have to invest in all of these first-party Google MagSafe-like accessories, which you can do if you don't have one already. But yeah, I thought that was kind of smart from Google.
I'm hoping it will bring down the price of MagSafe devices overall as well, because they have been so sort of locked in with Apple for such a long time. I have noticed the price just seems astronomical. Jake, you've actually seen some of the Pixel, the Google-made MagSafe attachments in real life, haven't you? They're really nice looking, right?
The ring stand is beautiful. It's like a heavy made, feels really, really premium. So I'm keen to get my hands on that and maybe even use that with an iPhone as well. But I will say the new charging stand, it's super heavy. Like the base, it's and I don't know if there's still a fan inside like the previous Pixel charger, but it's just a really, really nicely designed. And the other big benefit is when we were at the hands-on, we made sure to bring a MagSafe battery, and that works with it, which is kind of ironic because that's using a Lightning port still. And then Apple just never decided to release one with USB-C, but maybe this will encourage that. But my hope is we'll see, similar to what you were saying, Josie, more affordable MagSafe Qi 2 accessories come to market now with this. But the Pixel ring stand people shouldn't sleep on. Looks really, really, really nice. I don't know the price on it though, but I imagine it's not going to be cheap.
You just have to live in hope now that Samsung also adopts it in their next array of phones, so that it's just going to, I think once Samsung's on it as well, MagSafe accessories have no choice to be that, no business being that expensive.
I'm not sure Samsung ever will, because it seems like in order to have the magnets, you then have to switch off reverse wireless charging.
Oh, yeah.
Which Samsung has been doing for, I think longer than I've been reviewing their phones at least. And yeah, it's a very handy feature, especially if you're just charging up something small like your earbuds, or I think Galaxy Watches can use it as well. And I don't think Samsung's going to part with that easily, but then it's dropping the S Pen compatibility.
Exactly. I think they're not afraid to make changes like that. And would you rather use a MagSafe phone or have that reverse wireless charging capability?
I don't think I've reverse wirelessly charged a device in about 3 years.
Yeah.
So MagSafe then.
Yes. So Samsung, if you're listening,
Qi.
Samsung, give us MagSafe.
So obviously we've seen lots of people comparing the flagship phones to Samsung, Apple. Well, they're going to do that every single time. They're three of the biggest makers. And the one and only Mark Gurman also had a bone to pick with them off the back of some of those comparisons. Referencing back to when iPhone Series 10 came out, that came with a big, big design refresh, and this hasn't. Now, Axel, you had a bone to pick with that argument from him a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in fairness to Mark Gurman, who is Bloomberg's resident Apple reporter, I think that was an observation rather than a criticism. But he basically drew attention to the fact that, the 10th generation Pixel is identical to the previous one. Whereas with like the iPhone X or the Galaxy S10, they were big departures from what came before. They were kind of celebrations of 10 years of that particular line. I think Google is absolutely right to focus on the inside this year rather than the outside. As we've talked about, they're a kind of software powerhouse. Hardware isn't their thing. And not least because we got those big design changes last year. Like if you compare the Pixel 9 to the Pixel 8, it's a kind of more grown-up phone. It still has that sort of Pixel flavor with the camera bar. And the Pixel 9 won our Phone of the Year award. So, we shouldn't really be asking Google to change something that we liked. And I think the phones still look great. So now whether you like that design or not, obviously, is subjective. But yeah, I don't think we should call out Google for not giving us a 10th gen revamp when its software is miles better than what you can get out there.
You could make like a quick little joke as well, because the iPhone X was the iPhone 9, right?
Yeah.
So you could say they did actually make the big design dump on the Google Pixel 9.
That's
so,
actually very true.
Take that, go.
Get him, Hamish, get him. What were you going to say, Richard?
I was going to say that, yes, I'm all for celebrating like anniversaries of devices, but The iPhone 10, iPhone X came out in 2017. The Galaxy S10, I think, was 2019. And obviously, we are now 6 and 8 years on from that, and smartphones have really slowed down in terms of the way the design's altering.
Yeah.
So I think expecting something huge from Google is kind of unfair. And I mean, Gurman himself is talking about what the iPhone 20 is going to look like in a couple of years' time. And there are some big claims going on for that, but I still reckon the leap from iPhone 19, I'm assuming it'll be before then, to iPhone 20 will not be nearly as large as it was going from 8 to 10.
Yeah. I think what says a lot, though, is like when I see people commenting on the design of the Pixels, it's always like the most oddly specific thing they're going to complain about. Now, I have my own one of those, which I'll say in a moment. But one I see get brought up a lot is about the silver band around, like the reflective band around the edge of the phone, the casing, being perhaps a little bit too glossy, too plasticky looking, rather than that sort of like very metallic matte feel that you get on some of the other brands' phones. But I quite like that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually am with the complainer there.
Oh, okay.
If I was to change anything about it, and actually there was a rumor where we thought the Pixel 10 would ditch the glossy sides in favor of a sort of more matte finish like you get on the rear panel. I mean, it's not a deal breaker for me. I really like the look of them, but if I was going to change anything, that would probably.
I mean, next to the 10 there, which doesn't have the sort of glossy edge, I can see. Well, I would prefer the non-glossy one, but I don't take huge issue with it. Basically, now what I do take huge issue with takes us on to our next subject, which is the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. Now, I think it looks great. What is that little weird corner thing about on the cover screen?
I agree.
When you look at the cover screen, because it folds out, it's got the curved corner and you can just see a little bit of the backplate. Hate that. That triggers me at a deep level. However, other than that, it looks very cool. Now, Hamish, you're our resident foldables man, foldable friend. What's your vibe on it?
The Pixel Pro Fold is like a really interesting phone. My fiance Izzy has the 9 Pro Fold. So I sort of get some experience being able to compare the Samsung Galaxy Folds with that phone because I can sort of see. And I think that, as sort of Axel talked already about with sort of the Pixel line, I think that Google gets its software sort of done. I think sort of one of the topics, I think MagSafe is also, it's not MagSafe, PixelSnap is sort of playing into that. I feel like Google is just really setting itself up as the iPhone of Android because it's just really simple, easy to use, easy for people to transition to. And I think that there's a simplicity to using Pixel that I really like. And so seeing this sort of Pixel 10 Pro Fold.
That's the one.
It's a long, they're all dumb names, right? They need to
should have just
simplify
stuck with Pixel Fold. I don't know why they're putting the number in.
Or the Pro.
That too, actually.
Yeah, I guess the Pro, you want to allude that it's pretty good.
Does the folding not give that impression?
It's pretty pro to be able to make a foldable phone. I don't know.
I mean, if they'd called this the Galaxy Ultra 7 Z
Z
Fold, so anyway, phone names are getting too long, but skipping past all of this, so off topic. I think the main thing, it does seem like, though, that it hasn't really done a leaps and bounds ahead of where Samsung is. It's sort of on par in many ways. I guess sort of the big thing, which I think Jimmy Fallon made like a bit too much of a over the top of, it was sort of...
Let's go, IP68, let's go!
I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. Sure, that's a cool thing.
It's not.
But this is IP48, and I will stand by the fact that the 6.8 was fine. The 6 was fine in the sense that was also IP48, and I went to a few sandy beaches and even a desert last year, and my phone still works fine. Like, I think that as long as you are, and I don't use a case or anything. And I think as long as you're sort of careful with your phone and you're not like in some super dusty environment, the one I always think of is like if you work in like a workshop, so you've got loads of like wood shavings and stuff flying around and that sort of stuff, I guess a fold would be kind of awkward. But like if you look at some of these tests where like they test the durability, they're having to literally like rub the sand into the phone and you sort of go, okay, that's not really going to happen. I guess if you drop your phone at the beach,
or if you've got toddlers,
that could be an issue. If you've got a toddler, something to consider. But like the IP48 thing was fine. And so I think like it's cool that it's IP68. I'm not going to deny that. But I think that, saying let's go, it didn't need like super hyped up because I think for most people, they will not notice a difference jumping from one phone to the other. Because even like with a regular phone, if you go and drop that in a beach and you rub lots of sand into it, you'll have problems with it.
Yeah.
Izzy upgraded to the Fold because she had a Pixel 7 that she used at a beach for like a whole week doing some filming stuff, and she dropped it in the sand a couple of times. And there were parts of the phone, like the speakers, that didn't work properly after that. And I think that all phones will have some sort of problems with sound at some point, I guess, if you try and put dirt into them hard enough. So yeah, that's my ramble over.
Yeah, if you want to break your phone, it's very easy to do so intentionally. But broadly speaking, I mean, I saw someone in our comments saying that they work at a building site where there's like constantly concrete flying around, and they've got an IP48 phone that's completely fine. So even, like you say about working in a workshop, even then it's probably fine. I think the thing that's most interesting for me is that I feel like we're really starting to see the fork in the road come out with foldables in general, right? So you've got the Z Fold here, which you've got the most recent one, thinner, super thin, crazy thin, and bringing some of those ultra grade specs to a phone that is that thin, that folds out, is very cool. Whereas on the other side, you've got Google focusing, again, more on the AI side of things, more on maybe creating a bit more parity with the general experience of a phone and a foldable phone. I think that's quite cool. It's the most we're seeing people diverge for a long time, I think, in phones. I just want them to figure out a way to not have the ugly little corner bit. Once that's sorted, I'll be fine.
Shouldn't be too hard.
Now, Richard and Jake, you've both had some time with the phones. You've been doing testing this weekend, and Jake, you had a little bit of a hands-on with them a couple of weeks ago in New York. What's your experience been this weekend while you've been testing the phone?
It's been really fun. Like, there's an awful lot of AI-powered toys to try out, and probably the most interesting of those was Camera Coach, which is the tool where you hold the phone up, point it at something, you press the Camera Coach button, it does a little bit of AI analysis, and then it will pop up with a little carousel of ideas you can then pick one from, and then it will generate instructions for you. Mostly that's to do with framing, I found. So like it'll say, why not stand here and use a more powerful zoom lens so you cut off, say, a random person standing nearby or a trash can or something. Or if it's small enough, like I tried it with just a mug on a desk, and it was like, you can move that and move it around so it shines differently. I'd love if there was like a more advanced mode, because like through taking photos of devices for work, I sort of get having to get in close and fill the frame with your subject. I'd love it if there was more advanced features, like it could tell you, why not take this one vertically rather than horizontally because it frames what you're taking better,
right.
Or why not tweak your exposure or the film speed or something.
Oh, so it doesn't go through like the actual camera settings, it's all positioning?
So far, but bearing in mind this is preview.
Oh, of course,
which I do find kind of cheeky considering the advert that Google put out prior to launch about, soon, Apple, soon. When is soon?
Yeah.
I think this is the only one that is openly in preview, but still, it's clearly got more coming to it, and I hope that involves playing around with some of these more of these settings as well. Also, it doesn't work on the selfie camera, which I can't tell if that's just laziness or if that's a really good idea, because you don't want your phone saying, why not raise your phone higher so you can hide that double chin?
Oh, yeah. No, maybe not.
It's like, Google, no.
Google
paid $800 for you.
No, that's an interesting one. I didn't really understand when they were doing the demo live. I didn't really understand what happened there.
It's not actually interactive per se either. Basically, it comes up with these steps, and then you just press a button to advance through them. And yet it'll highlight like your camera's, like the little shortcut bars on the bottom. But it won't like acknowledge that you've done a certain step. So if you really want to, you could just dash all the way through and press the shutter button without having changed anything. There's definitely room for it to be smarter, I think is clear. But it's still fun to try out, and it did give me some fun ideas of like how to angle, like there's some photos of some dogs with cameras in one of the nearby parks here, and it did suggest, why not take one from below? And I was like, yeah, that was a nice shot.
That's cool. And Jake, what about you? What's your experience been so far with the Pixel devices you've tried?
It's been pretty solid. I think the whole idea of Magic Queue has been really neat, and how it's kind of servicing up those info. So if you have to call, one example I did with it yesterday was to call an airline to make a change. And I like how it pulls up the reservation. It'll stay on hold for you. It does all that kind of stuff, which is cool. So I'm excited to try that out a little more. I think the coolest demo, not the one that Jimmy Fallon did, but I think the one that we did during the hands-on was the live translate on the call.
Yeah.
And it did match my voice. It matched Lance's voice really, really well. And it does it quick. I've been using the live translate in the iOS 26 beta also. And this seems just a hair bit faster on the Google side. So I think that tensor might be working overtime. But I think the live translate is one of those features that could really, from an accessibility standpoint, really be helpful, whether, you're in a different country or where you're chatting with somebody in a different language. So I think that's probably been the coolest one. And then I hope Camera Coach gets a little better also.
The live translate thing seems super handy, especially that it sounds like you. Because, I think we've probably all got some kind of story. But I remember, I was sort of in Italy and had a fault with a hire car on my final day of my trip. I'm trying to coordinate with 2 different rental locations because it wasn't a returning to the same point. I was returning to a different place, and it was in Italy, and I didn't speak a lick of Italian. And so I guess having something sort of translate from me speaking English to a language that they can better understand would have probably made that interaction a lot easier.
And that is what the Tensor is good at.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. This sort of baked in, not flashy stuff that's practical, not in your face.
But I don't really get the advantage of having it done in an approximation of your own voice. Yes, I get the benefit of having it translate live for you in the moment while you're on a call, but I think, at least for me, I'd find it more comfortable having, even if it is a robotic voice or one of these slightly more realistic Gemini ones you can pick. I don't know why... No one's going to get fooled. Like, you're not going to call up your German grandmother or something, talk to her in perfect German all the time. She's going to put the phone down like, wow, he really must have been hitting Duolingo.
Although I guess, in terms of how it captures emotion, it's quite impressive. When I was looking through the footage that we got of Lance using it, I was really impressed how well it captured his intonation. And think of, perhaps when we're interviewing people, for example, that might be non-English speakers, it is important to sort of get the emotional gestures in people's voices to understand the impact of what they're saying. So for professional stuff, I can see it being useful. Do you need a car rental company to understand that you're super frustrated by the tone of your voice? Maybe. Depends on what the problem is. But I get where you're coming from, because there is a lot of compute power that's going to go into that. And also, I always look at those things with fear and think about things like scams and think about ways that people can use that technology badly. But we live in hope, and it's very impressive that they can do it, if nothing else.
Yes.
Now, lastly, we didn't just have phones news. We also saw the new Pixel Watch 4 and the Buds 2A. Jake, you're the only one who's actually had any hands-on time with those. So what was your first impression?
It's very domed, the screen on the watch. That was the biggest shock to me, is that it's physically curved. I wish I had one here. Doesn't launch till October, so I think we got a little bit longer, but still comes in 2 sizes, which I think is the right move. I believe it's 41 millimeter, 45 millimeter, has a new processor inside. It has the Material 3 expressive UI, but this dome display could theoretically be a little bit more durable because it's a dome and it's a solid piece of glass that's slightly curved. But I think the big advantage is it gives you even more screen space. So stuff can go a little closer to the edges. I think instead of a 5-day forecast or a 3-day forecast, it's like an extra day. So it's nice to see it from there, and more so than the Series 10 from Apple. When you look at the side, you can still see the hands going around the clock, which is, I think, more so of a trick that Google can call out than maybe a really actual usable feature. But we'll see on that. I think the real usable feature, and it's part of Google's AI chops, is smart replies. So I think we've all been there on any of our wearables or even on our phones where you get yes, no, okay, maybe. This is actually running an LLM model on your wrist, or might be on your phone. I'll need to triple check that when we review it. But it will actually come up with a smart reply that makes sense for whatever the text message is. So I think that could be a real beneficial feature. It still does all the health tracking stuff, but they redesigned the back, and this is twofold. It has a better charger, although it's no longer compatible with the previous one, but I don't think many people will have a gripe with that. So they probably don't have too many Pixel Watch chargers hanging around at home. But it now sits sideways, but there are now multiple screws, so it is sustainable. It's serviceable, which is huge. You'll be able to fix the screen if need be or replace the battery. So that's a really nice trend to see here.
The Pixel Watch was famously really hard to fix, right? I think I've written a couple of stories about that.
I don't think it was really fixable.
But broadly speaking, that's the same with wearables, but also earbuds. And I think it's the 2A that are also fully repairable as well, right?
Yes. So just the case.
Just
the case. Yeah. So the case is a lot more compact, but you can swap out I believe it's a lithium-ion battery inside. So they're both repairable. Yeah.
Which is huge from a sustainability perspective, because those sorts of Bluetooth headphones that come in those cases are one of the biggest contributors to e-waste, especially given that they are not repairable. They get lost very often as well. At me next time. But It's big news and exciting news. And I actually was really impressed that Google were the ones to sort of get there first, because if anything, I thought that would be something that we would see from Apple well before we'd see other manufacturers jump on that. So that was a big kudos to them, I think. Well, how were the Buds 2A? Because you tried those as well, right?
Yes, we didn't get to try music on them, but we did I had to put them in my ear, and I heard the noise canceling turn on. But they're neat. They're much more affordable. I believe they're $129, I want to say, but it's nice that they have ANC, which they're promising is as good as the original Pixel Buds Pro ANC, which they were fine earbuds, just massively bulky. But they should be neat. And then the Buds 2 Pro, which we got last year, are getting a lot of, I don't want to call it copycat features from AirPods, but a lot of copycat features from AirPods with gesture control. They're going to have adaptive audio, which is literally the exact same as Apple's adaptive audio. And then also some hearing protection features. But I think the Buds 2A will leave it to the audio team to test, but I'm excited to see what they think of them.
And just to find out, these things, they're meant to be like 100,000 times better than wired earbuds, right? Because that's one of my main takeaways from the thing. Do you remember like that weird little sort of TikTok style skit with the interview on the subway?
Oh,
and then wired headphones are so weird, and then it sort of launched into an advert basically for the Buds 2A, and it's the only thing I took away from that whole thing.
I genuinely thought that was an actual interaction you'd have with someone about wired headphones, an actual hot take from someone, and then they pulled out the Buds 2A, and I'm like, but they haven't released yet. You've just ruined any semblance of belief I had in this segment. Also, massive incorrect. I love wired headphones, and I will never stop loving wired headphones. I bought myself the USB-C Apple ones, and for some reason they're so much more uncomfortable than the original Lightning
you
ones.
like the aesthetic of wired headphones?
No, I
don't prefer the sound?
No, I prefer the experience of it. I hate having a case to think about. I hate having to think about charging. I hate that when I drop my phone, there's nothing I can catch to save it from hitting the ground, which is a genuine use. I have a lanyard now. But anyway, we've spoken about Apple a little bit there, and I think that's a good time to round off with our final little segment, because obviously it's coming up to iPhone month, where we are expecting the iPhone 17 to launch. Hamish is thrilled. He loves working iPhone launches. They're his favourite. What are some of the rumours we've heard so far about the iPhone 17? And especially now we've seen all of the phones from the biggest manufacturers this year. How do we feel like Apple's going to sort of stack up with some of those?
I mean, I think we're finally going to get another design change. Not super significant, but it seems like we're going to have a camera block that runs across the back of the rear panel of the phone. Mm-hmm. Kind of Pixel-like, but obviously it'll be square as we see on Apple phones currently, but goes all the way across. I don't know why they're doing that apart from for something, just to have something different. I'm not actually sure. I think we'll get a 48 megapixel telephoto on the Pro, so it may be that. You may have more space on the rear panel. 128 hertz screens for the base model, maybe, which would be a big deal. Not that we should particularly celebrate that because Android phones have had it for so long, but it is like finally Apple, taking that decision. It won't necessarily be ProMotion. I'm not sure if it will be adaptive, so it can go 0 to 120. I think it's straight 120.
I don't know what the rumors say, but yeah, I am not looking forward to finding out what catch it is, because presumably Apple wants to keep ProMotion as a thing. Exactly, so I don't know what regular motion.
I was just going to say, it would just be motion.
It's just motion. Screen moves.
And then I think the last thing will be, I think an iPhone 17 Air instead of a Plus. Mm-hmm. So we've heard a lot about this super slim iPhone, a sort of Galaxy S25 Edge rival, and we think that will come instead of a Plus this year. So if you want that larger screen, you're going to have to go Pro Max. But it is worth saying that the current Pro this year, there was a size increase on that. So there's now going to be 4 or 5 sizes to choose from. I'm not sure. But yeah, iPhone 17 Air.
Okay, interesting. I was wondering if any of these new design features they're going to add in are going to sort of lean into the sort of liquid glass of it all, if they're going to try and make something that feels super sort of reflective, shiny. I don't know. Squidgy. Glass isn't very squidgy, Hamish. I don't know what glass
depends how hot it is.
Well, also, I still remember, I think it was such a fun Pixel feature. It had like the haptic
feedback.
The
squeeze, yeah.
Yeah, you could feel it. I don't think it had too many uses, but it was just like, I just remember it being gone someday, and it's like, oh, that's a bit of a shame. Like, I just remember just like giving you some of that feedback, and it was odd that it then didn't do that.
That reminds me of the first generation iPad. I remember my dad got it, and he'd come into the living room, and they have the pool simulation, like the pond, and you tap the screen, and then there's like a lag, and then it goes ripples, and you go, oh my God, that's amazing. And actually looking back, that was such a bad feature.
Is your dad maybe a cat?
Yes,
because
exactly.
I think
He
that's
loved
the
it.
only
It was
thing.
milk rather than water.
The only creatures I've seen at all entertained by that have always been my cats.
And the beer app, of course.
Yeah,
iBeer, yeah.
The
no, I can
iBeer
forget.
app. Jake, what do you think? Have you got any predictions for the iPhone 17 series?
I'm hopeful they do some fun colors again. I really want that 17 Air, if it turns out to be true, to come in like a matching sky blue, which would be really nice. And I'm keen to see what they do with the cases, because I think it was the woven tech, or fine woven, were not so great and pulled. And I think there's some rumors they might be reintroducing that a little. So we'll see there. But I think the watches will be ones to watch also. Pun intended, I guess. Just with blood oxygen returning in the US, I'm very curious to see if they give that like a huge applause on stage or what they're going to try to do with it.
May finally get a new Apple Watch Ultra as well, because last year Apple just did a new color for the Ultra 2, of
Yes,
course.
that's right. What about, would I read correctly that there might be some AirPods rumors as well for another Pro?
Yeah, I think there's something about there might be some new AirPods.
AirPods Pro 3?
Yeah.
I got AirPods Pro 2 the other weekend, and they are fantastic in terms of the active noise cancellation, amazing. The hearing test, fantastic, because it's told me I've only lost 1 decibel of my hearing in my right ear. Doubly fantastic considering that I was diagnosed hard of hearing when I was 12. Turns out I'm not at all, so check your AirPods.
Actually, yeah, I've got the first gen AirPods Pro, and I have never. I love them. I love them. I've never felt like I needed to get the AirPods Pro 2. So I'm interested to see what they do with 3 that would make me, as a first gen user, want to get them.
There's meant to be health tracking features or like temperature or
Oh, yeah,
something.
Yeah, so there's like a heart rate monitor in your AirPods 3 or something. I don't know,
Are there even blood vessels strong enough in your ears to do?
Yeah, there probably would be, because it's just like in here. It's like a bit inserted, like a bit of stuff. I don't know. So I think
Audiologists,
We're not
please
ear.
comment.
adding.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're not ear scientists.
But there's always
here.
talk of like adding some weird sensors to various things. I think there was one point like putting a camera on AirPods from like various different companies. Meta, I think, is this one where they keep thinking about like, how can we do like a smartwatch or AirPods but make it XR in some way? It's always like, let's just stuff cameras on everything. And it's just, at some point, I feel like these sensors aren't useful on stuff. I mean, I guess there'll be some small number of people that would care enough about having a heart rate tracker in their AirPods but wouldn't want to get a smartwatch or even like a fitness tracker for that. But I'm not sure what percentage of people that would.
I mean, maybe that's the thing. They're meant to be like a gateway, like, oh, I like this limited amount of telemetry I'm getting from my ears.
Yeah.
Why don't I spend another $400 and get the full-blown thing on my wrist?
Why don't they just release a smart ring though? That's like I would rather see something purpose built from them that's not an Apple Watch than just shoving
It's so
it into.
perfect that I can just picture the transition from like that big round building they have in Cupertino just transforming into the
Into
ring.
a ring,
I just feel like the
exactly.
simplicity of a ring, a smart ring, feels very Apple as
does,
well.
yeah.
Just sort of real pared down. They can charge you $1,000 for it because it can
so
be made
much
from something really good, and it can do like nothing that your Apple Watch can do. I think a smart ring is like purpose built for Apple. I feel.
Yeah, have we heard many rumors about that, Jake?
They come and go. Definitely. We've seen reports on it.
Nothing ahead of September though?
Nothing. I don't think it'll be this year at all.
That is unfortunately all we have time for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and thanks to our lovely panel for joining us this week. You can check out TechRadar.com for all of our reviews of the new Google Pixel devices and the best of the rest of tech. We'll see you there. Bye!
Bye.
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 I'm like jingling so hard. I feel like half of this podcast is going to be me like
Jingle, jingle.